Hello, Trombone Internet. This is Chris Van Hoff, assistant to the regional manager of the International Trombone Festival. We at the festival, of course, are huge fans of the pod, and we are really excited to invite you to attend this year's 2024 International Trombone Festival at TCU in Fort Worth, Texas. Dave Begnosh is our host. We have the world premiere of a brand new double concerto for trombone and piano with the Fort Worth Symphony. We have the American Brass Quintet. We have late night jazz featuring a Latin jam session. Like, everything is happening. All the cast will be there. It's the best hang in the world, and we hope to see you there. You can register for the festival still online at www.internationaltrombonefestival.com, and it's happening the last week of May. So go register. We'll see you in Texas.
Welcome to the Trombone Retreat, a podcast of the Third Coast Trombone Retreat. Today on the podcast, us. We have a special bonus episode for you guys today. I had a bit of a, let's call it a little tumble.
Fall down and go boo-boo.
A fall down and go boo-boo. I fell and hit my head, had a little concussion, had to be in the hospital for a little bit. I don't want to go into details, but you can find out more information on my Instagram if you want. But I just definitely want to just shout out Taylor Jones, second trombonist in the Pittsburgh Opera, and Taylor Fong, a longtime worker at the Trombone Retreat, for really being there for me.
And fabulous bass trombonist.
And fabulous bass trombonist. And basically saving me. So because of that, it's editing something would be a little bit much for me right now. So luckily we have this really great episode of an interview we did recently. Do you remember this, Nick? It wasn't too long ago.
It was probably... I'd say a month and a half. I mean, it could have been 7 years ago or a month and a half. That's 2020 for you.
Very true. And so what we did was one of my best friends, Ralph Crewe, and you might recognize that last name, Crewe. His dad is Murray Crewe, the late Murray Crewe, longtime bass trombonist of the Pittsburgh Symphony. And
one of the true greats.
One of the true greats, and inspiration to you growing up, right?
Absolutely. I wanted to study with him, and my top choice actually for my undergrad was Duquesne University, where he was teaching at the time, mainly because I didn't think I could get into Juilliard, I suppose, and I didn't think I'd like a big city like New York. And then I got to New York and actually really liked it. And it was still a tough decision because I really grew up loving Murray and his playing. And some of my earliest classical music CDs were Pittsburgh Symphony with Lauren Mazel, like Fountains of Rome, the whole Rome trilogy, Respighi. I wore those CDs out, if you can wear a CD out.
Wore out the grooves on my CD.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyone that knew Murray or got to hear Murray, and if you haven't gotten a chance to hear some of those recordings, don't waste any time. They're incredible. But Ralph is equally a special person and maybe one of the smartest people I know. No offense, Nick.
Hey, I set the other end of the bell curve there,
But yeah, he's probably a genius. He's a scientist, and he's had science podcasts for a while. He has a new science YouTube channel, which is amazing, and you have to check it out. It's called Isn't That Something? And it's just basically different topics and just deep dives into random things. Like the first one's like, what is a duck? And you just learn so many different things. And so for our podcast, he wanted to have a podcast about what is the trombone. And so he asked us if we would come on his podcast. And of course we did. Some of this stuff might be familiar, but it was a really fun talk. And I think you'll really enjoy it. And thanks for letting us just throw this on.
Just a special teaser for the next episode. We already have this in the can, but it's ready to, it needs to be edited. We interviewed one of the principal trombonists of the Metropolitan Opera, Damian Austin. And Damian is a fabulous trombonist and amazing musician and a really true friend of mine, which is rare. I don't have very many friends that aren't paid by my mom.
She told you that she pays me?
I figured it out,
Oh man. Oh, and lastly, I wanted to make sure I mentioned, we had a fact check.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe let me make sure I get the name right here. We get a lot of feedback on episodes. In our last episode with David Bender, thanks so much for the great feedback. Someone from Finland actually messaged us and informed us that David Bender was actually wrong about something.
Wow.
Which, if you follow this podcast, we enjoy nothing more than to correct David Bender.
I'm not exactly sure why, but it's just a tradition of ours. I have no idea how it started, but it did.
And actually, he mentions in the podcast that Sibelius never wrote an opera.
Wrong. You're wrong, David.
That's in fact wrong. And if my phone will actually turn on in time for me to actually tell you what it is,
I can get there.
It's the Instagram.
So I'll read the whole post. It says, "Hey, thank you for the great podcast. I really enjoyed listening. But as a Finnish trombone player, I'd like to correct one thing that David Binder said. Sibelius actually composed an opera. It's called The Maiden in the Tower. The first performance was 1896, so it was composed before the symphonies. Maybe he noticed that opera is not his cup of tea."
Oh,
man. I mean,
a little burn at the end, too.
I know.
And what's her name?
Oh, I'm sorry. We need a shout out for the fact checker. Anna Rusa. I hope I said that right, but thank you for the feedback.
Thank you, Anna Rusa.
I have a confession to make myself, and Sebastian doesn't even know this. So ever since our last interview with David, there's been a long discussion between the three of us on the Bagel Bites theme song.
Mm.
And while I dragged my amazing PhD musicology wife into the conversation to give musical analysis to the Bagel Bites theme song, I was right, but I was also wrong. I sang it, pizza in the morning, pizza in the evening, pizza at supper time, like this, and it should be pizza in the morning, pizza in the evening, pizza at supper time. So it outlines a major arpeggio, but I also was not singing all the right notes. So David, I don't want to say I'm right and you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong. How about we're both right and we're both wrong? So I invite you December 3rd to meet me at the Harvard Civic Center, and we will battle for the belt.
And the winner gets like a year's supply of Bagel Bites.
Which coincidentally is no Bagel Bites, because those things are freaking gross.
Oh man, I even tagged Bagel Bites in the Instagram post.
They're one of those things that you like as a kid. You know, actually, when I was probably like 25, I went and bought a thing of Bagel Bites, like nostalgia, and I heated them up, and I was like, how on earth did I eat these things? They're so gross.
I'm just trying to think of the guy that invented that idea and how much he was smoking at the time. Like, what if, like, I really like bagels, like, but what if they were just like small, but like you put pizza on them, and you just like you could eat them pizza on a bagel at the same time.
He's like, it's like 2 a.m. He just gets back from the bar, and he's sitting in the living room, and he's holding a slice of pizza and a bagel, and he's like, Martha, get down here! I got it! I figured it out.
I could see him being the type of person, the type of person that would invent Bagel Bites would be the type of person that would write the song for it in the same night.
Well, okay, so I also learned some history. That was a total ripoff of a song from the 50s. What? Sugar in the morning, sugar in the evening.
Oh, come on.
Time. Yep. And when I started singing that, my mom knew the lyrics to the sugar in the morning, but she didn't know the Bagel Bites theme song. Go figure.
That's hilarious. Wow.
So this is really, brought up a lot of nostalgia for me, and also been a real source of contention between myself and David Townsley Binder. I have no idea what his middle name is, so I just came up with that.
That would be a fitting middle name, though.
Mm-hmm. Well, cool. Let's circle back. Let's get back in the route here.
We talked a lot about our backgrounds growing up and how we came to music, and it was a really fun talk.
It was.
We had a lot of fun, and there's a terrible dueling mouthpiece improv in the middle somewhere out of nowhere, so hope you enjoy. This episode of the Trombone Retreat is also brought to you by Houghton Horns. Houghton Horns deals Shires, Bach, Yamaha, Courtois, Greg Black, and is the exclusive U.S. dealer for Tyne instruments.
They have a recently updated selection of Shires components, and you can also browse vintage and consignment trombones on their site.
Have a free in-person or virtual equipment consultation with their team of professional musicians. There's a 15-day money-back guarantee with free shipping and returns on new trombones and mouthpieces, as well as multiple easy financing options on all inventory.
Special offer to Trombone Retreat podcast listeners. Enter the promo code RETREAT1020 at checkout to receive $300 off your purchase of a new trombone from houghtonhorns.com.
All right, so I'm really excited to have two really brilliant musicians and hosts of their own podcast from the Trombone Retreat and Associated podcast. We've got Nick Schwartz and Sebastian Vera. Guys, thanks for coming on the show.
How's it going, dude? We're honored.
Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, I'm very excited to talk to you both. Why don't we get started by learning a little bit, for those who aren't familiar with your just enormous fame, for those who don't know, which is probably only like a tiny fraction of the audience, who are you guys?
I mean, that's really why we got into trombone, was for the fame. When people ask like why I chose trombone, it's usually like, oh, for the money and fame and the ladies, and it's just constant. But Nick and I are really good friends. We've been really good friends for a long time, and we're both trombonists. I grew up in Texas. Long story long, I play principal trombone in the Pittsburgh Opera, and principal trombone in the River City Brass Band, and I'm a professor of trombone at Duquesne University and Slippery Rock University.
It's my turn now, I guess. Hi, I'm Nick, and I'm a trombonist. The first step to recovery is admitting that you have a problem. Anyhow, yeah, I grew up all over the place, born in Chicago, then lived in Ohio, then lived in two places in California, then I lived in Dallas, then I lived in El Paso, and that's where I started playing the trombone, is El Paso. Played there for 1 year, and then we moved to Michigan, which is where I did my kind of really formative years of middle school and high school, and got more serious about the trombone when I moved here. And fast forwarding a little bit, I'm the principal bass trombonist of the New York City Ballet, and I am the brass chair coordinator and faculty at the Mannes School of Music. Sebastian's alumnus? Is that what it's called? His alma mater. That's the word. He's an alumni of it.
Go fighting narwhals.
Yes, and I'm also brass coordinator and bass trombone faculty at Juilliard Pre-College and bass trombone faculty at Bard College.
Wow. That's a lot of stuff. And neither of you guys actually mentioned the Third Coast Trombone Retreat yet.
Well, I guess we'll just kind of unfold it, how we got into that, because it involves beer and friendship, as most good things do.
Of course.
Sebastian, you want to take it away, or do you want my grand storytelling?
I mean, we can do a little both. Nick and I, like we said, we've been really good friends for a long time, and in New York City, it's a huge city, obviously, but it's also a small world when, all the musicians tend to know each other, all the trombonists tend to know each other. And we were good friends, and we were hanging out at the Whole Foods bar in, where is that again?
Columbus Circle.
Circle.
It's gone now.
No.
That's very sad. Pour out
it
a
is
drink.
sad.
And we're on the, every time I tell this story, we add an additional beer. So yeah, we were on the 9th beer, and we were just like, these kids graduating school, they're not prepared when they graduate school, and they don't learn all the things you need to learn about, being a professional and taking that next step, and everyone's freaking out and nervous and like, we should do our own festival. And so, we came up with this idea. We had no idea what we were doing, and it just more and more, it just kind of formulated, and it ended up, we went to, first of all, we had to figure out where to do it, and we chose a small town where Nick's family lives in Michigan. It's right on Lake Michigan. It's white sand beaches. It looks like the ocean. There's deer running around, dense forests. It's beautiful. And we just created this thing for, we accept like around 20 college students that are looking to pursue a career in music, typically, classical music majors, orchestral music majors. And we kind of just talk about a lot of things for a week that you don't normally get to talk about in school. And maybe Nick can tell you about a few of those things.
Well, like Sebastian said, I think one of the things we thought was missing, at least from music education, is just kind of the reality of the situation of when you leave school. Because most schools are kind of geared towards pushing you out into an orchestral environment, pretty much, if you're studying classical music. While that's mainly what I do, and I did end up that way, I would say a majority of people, their career is going to look a little more varied, a lot more freelance, a lot, a mix of things. And it's not only of gigs and jobs, but styles of music. So we wanted to kind of just address the elephant in the room that, like, hey, your career is going to probably look a lot different than you think it's going to look. And that's an okay and good thing. Your life's going to be interesting. Your career is going to be interesting. So we wanted to touch on that, but we also felt like a lot of students were just so stressed out, like Sebastian said, and so worried about the future, which we all worry about the future, especially now during Corona times. We wanted to say, like, hey, there's a reason you got into this. Not everyone goes into the trombone for the fame and fortune. But, there's a reason you got into it. It's because it's fun to do. And, making music is a special experience. And we're trying to bring you back to those roots just for like an 8-day period to remind yourself, hey, let's have some fun. Let's make this a pleasurable experience again, rather than just beating ourselves up over and over again in a practice room. So yeah, we created that, and we are 7 years in now. Is that right? Oh my goodness.
I think so.
Wow.
Jeez. Time flies. So yeah, we've done 7 retreats here in Michigan, and it's fantastic. And we started a podcast just pre-pandemic, and that actually has been a great tool, I think, for not just for us, but again, furthering our idea of that this world doesn't have to be so strict and scary and serious. When you hear other people's success stories, it usually involves a time when there is doubt. Yeah. So, and hearing that, hey, they persevered, I might too, Right. That kind of is, I think, reassuring for a lot of people. Sorry if I went too off track there, but
no, not at all. That's perfect. It's a great show. What is the name of the show? For those who want to, dive deeper after this episode, if people are like addicted to trombone talk and they want more, how can they find your show?
As they should be. It's called The Trombone Retreat. It's available everywhere you find your podcasts, and I'm finding you don't have to know that much about trombone. It's mainly an interview podcast, and it's just stories. It's just people's lives, and we talk to a lot of really talented trombonists from all areas, people in major orchestras to jazz musicians, to like the last interview we had was the trombonist who just played on Taylor Swift's new album. It's just been really fun. It's a way for us to talk to old friends and meet new people and just hear people's unique stories.
Right.
Yeah, it's a totally interesting show, even if you're not a professional classical trombonist. And yeah, you guys have a great rapport, and it's pretty cool to sort of get a look behind the scenes at what life is like for professional trombone players, which is an unusual group of people. And you guys also play
unusual group of people.
You play an unusual instrument as well. So I wanted to take a few minutes of the show for those who don't know trombone at all. Like, what is a trombone? How does it work? Why is it that way? I don't know. What can you guys tell me about what a trombone is?
Well, where do we start? Do you want me to start from, like, what does a trombone look like? Or where do we want to start? Versus
yeah, let's describe a trombone. Close your eyes and visualize a trombone.
Well, okay, so one thing I find amazing about the trombone, just a starting fact, is the trombone in the orchestral setting is the only instrument that has not truly evolved from its basic form. And the basic form is a long piece of tubing. Imagine a long piece of tubing, but you bend it, and it has a hand slide to change the notes. So it goes down, and then it comes back up into a flaring bell that points out to the audience. So number one, it's the only instrument that uses a hand slide to change notes rather than valves like you might see on a trumpet, or obviously string instruments and wind instruments work, or woodwind instruments work on different principles. But we change notes with a hand slide, which gives us our luscious legato sounds. But the trombone was, from all accounts, invented in the 1500s, somewhere in that range. I've actually seen the second oldest trombone in the entire world in Vienna.
Really?
I know. It's in the Musical Instrument Museum in Vienna. It's from I want to say it's from 1502 or something like that. It's super old. But you look at it and it looks identical to a modern trombone as far as its basic shape and size. The only difference is the size of the bell itself is different, and it's decorated. It has lots of flourishes, lots of engravings, things like that on that, but that doesn't change the sound. That's just design. But yeah, its basic principle is you move the hand slide with your right arm, and that will change the notes. So I would say that brings us to the most stereotypical thing that we do, is that we can do glisses, which would be wow notes, things like that, where it's completely smooth. And other valve instruments like the horn or the French horn or the trumpet can't do that, because when you press a valve, it makes a kind of popping sound. And so you can't get that completely smooth gliss, which is something obviously completely unique to the trombone.
Yeah, totally. It's a classic sound that everyone has heard, although it probably only makes up a small fraction of what you actually play. But when it comes to brass instruments in general, like the trombone, you develop your sound in an interesting way. Like the origin of the sound, like most of the tubing is essentially sort of an amplifier and something that helps control the pitch of the instrument, but the actual origin of the sound is not a vibrating reed or a vibrating string, but your lips, right? Can you guys, would you, if you don't mind, I would love for you to demonstrate.
Oh, boom.
So yeah, like Ralph was saying, do you want me to do this, Sebastian?
Sure.
Maybe you can do it together.
Oh, do you have a mouthpiece, Sebastian? So yeah, we buzz our lips. I'll do that first without the mouthpiece. You just buzz your lips like that, and anyone can do that, but we do it in obviously a controlled manner to create specific pitches. So you do that, but you do it into a mouthpiece, which is small metal cup essentially that acts as an amplifier, and you put that into the trombone, and that's what creates your sound. So Sebastian, you want to play a little duet for our listeners?
Oh man, yeah. Let's see if we can get the timing right.
All right, let's play Mosey on down to 9th Street in B flat. Keep the cymbals splashy, and let's take that bass line for a walk.
Oh, so we're just making up a song. Okay.
Beautiful. That was
Wow.
inspiring.
That was an original composition by Sebastian and myself.
Control save.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's good. I want to make that my ringtone for you guys.
Oh god, I'm sorry.
So
Yeah, it's interesting because technically you're vibrating. If you want to get really technical, you're vibrating the air column within the horn. So people are thinking there's all this air coming out of the end of the bell, but no, you're really just vibrating the instrument. And we get all technical with the type of mouthpiece we have and the type of equipment we have and the metals and stuff. But the basic shape is the most important thing. And a lot of people ask about how you know where the notes are with the slide, if we want to get into that. But there's 7, we call them positions. So there's 7 main positions where you just kind of memorize where the slide goes. And within each position, you can play a series of notes on the harmonic series by buzzing your lips. So
yeah,
all that fun
the
stuff.
harmonic series is a whole other level that we can get into more. But I do want to talk about the slide, because that is what makes the trombone unique. Although, I mean, of course, the range in which it is pitched is sort of special too, and its role in music. But the slide, I should admit that I also am not nearly on your level, but I am a trombone player, and I actually grew up in a trombone household. My father was a professional trombone player.
And an amazing one.
I was very lucky to be exposed to some really great trombone playing early on. And one of the things that stands out to me, having a lot of experience with good trombone playing as well as my own playing, which was not as good, is that the instrument is for very beginners, very difficult to play in tune, right? But as you get to the expert level, I think that in many ways the trombone is the easiest instrument to play in tune. You have this very fine control over your intonation. Can you guys talk a little bit maybe about intonation, like what that even means and how that works on the trombone?
Well, that's God, that's a lot to unpack actually, because it's like, okay, how do you explain intonation? I think the first place to start is that we play with something. We play with a tuner, which to test our intonation, which is a device that tells you how close to zero you are. If you imagine zero is in tune, and then it goes by cents, CENTS, of how sharp or flat you are, how high or low you are to that relative pitch. So we tune to the relative pitch generally of A440. An A natural is 440 hertz, right? So that's what we're tuning to. That's our base. And so everything is based off of that series in intonation. And so you can look at a tuner, play a note, and it can be center or right or left, telling you if you're high or low. And that is basic intonation, but that's kind of generally how you learn how to use your ears and muscle memory with the slide to tell you where the pitches are. But when you're playing an ensemble, you use your ears. So if you can imagine, you have the same pitch, and if you're a little out of tune, you're going to hear a discrepancy in sound. Right. So then you would adjust to make those sounds sound as close together as possible. And that generally is truly what intonation is about, is making yourself sound in unison with, or in harmony, I guess, with other musicians. And all these things just take a lot of repetitive practice.
Right.
I would say is, it's hard to explain intonation when you're starting from base zero.
No, totally. I think it's one of the challenging things about studying music. I've talked to some players who say they can almost feel when an ensemble pulls into tune, though. Do you guys experience that?
Sure.
Absolutely.
There's this between, if you have the same note, for example, like I was talking about, if they're out of tune with each other, you can hear a discrepancy, like waves, sound waves.
Right.
You can hear it. Whoa, 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 that sort of feeling. And when you get closer, those waves get bigger. Whoa, 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 like this, bigger and wider. And when you're in tune, you should hear no waves. I mean, if it's a unison. Right. If we get into harmonies where you have complex chord structures and stuff like that, obviously the wave structures are very, very different. But Sebastian, tell us about intonation. I want to hear your take on this.
Well, I mean, when you're young, especially if you go hear like a sixth grade beginner band, it's probably gonna sound pretty out of tune. When you're young, you're trying to make the instrument work.
Right.
And it's fine. And I still remember the first time I played in a band and felt live harmony and playing with, I think it was Jurassic Park. We played Jurassic Park in sixth grade in the band, and I had goosebumps. Like the hair was standing up on my arms. It was the most surreal experience I'd never experienced before, and I was instantly hooked. And the older you get, the more refined your ear gets, hopefully, and it starts to bug you more when it's out of tune, because how freaking wonderful it is when it's in tune, because it's just a special thing. And it's one of those things that a non-trained musician, they might not have the words to describe it, but they will like something that sounds in tune versus not in tune. They'll hear two different things and they'll be like, I like that one better. And it's because it's so deep within yourself. They won't know how to describe it maybe, but those are the things that good musicians are actively thinking about all the time, because intonation is one of the most important things. And it's so deep within us when something resonates with something else, and that's what makes music so special. It's like you're coming together to create this thing that's bigger than you. And when you have like a full orchestra that's just like on the same page and special and playing in tune, it's just a magical thing.
To add to that, one of the things I think is so special about art, and I think music, particularly within art forms, is the subjectivity of everything. Because even though there is a way to measure intonation, like I said, with a tuner. When we play in an ensemble, we're not playing with a tuner, we're playing with our ears and our eyes and our eyes looking at music, not a tuner, I mean. And so in the end, even something as objective as we can get in the music world as intonation, there is a level of subjectivity to like how in tune something is, or if it's properly tuned. And like, there's so many ways to break it down. And that's also one of the exciting things I think about playing music is the subjectivity of everything.
For sure. And, speaking of subjective impressions of things, the trombone itself has, I think, an interesting reputation. Trombone players have a fun reputation. But also there are, I think, maybe some misconceptions out there about what a trombone is and what it does. Like, how would you address some of those things?
I mean, I'd be curious to hear what you've experienced, Nick, too. I guess the most common misconceptions have been, first of all, a lot of people don't realize how beautiful the trombone can be and that we don't just play loud all the time. That's typically what you might hear in certain contexts, but it has such a vocal quality, and it can be incredibly expressive. Even, Beethoven wrote incredibly expressive things for the trombone. And, trombone typically has been used in a lot of comic situations, especially having the slide, like depicting clowns and circus music, but there's been a lot of, there's been times in our history where a trombonist was one of the most famous musicians in the world. We had, Tommy Dorsey and Glenn Miller, and they were like the number one pop artist going at the time. And so there's a history, and I think it's an instrument that, among all the instruments, and of course I'm biased, but I think when you put what we call a trombone choir, when you put a lot of trombones together, I think it's one of the most unmatched, most beautiful sonorities you've ever heard. And some instruments don't sound that great when you put them all together like that.
Like the oboe. Well, to add on to that, going back in time, I mean, well, like you said, Sebastian, the trombone has a reputation now of kind of being, well, here's a good example. The teacher in Charlie Brown, all that stuff, that's a trombone with a plunger mute, actually. A lot of people think of that as a trombone, or something silly, or someone falling down, something like that. But you go back in time to the Romantic period of music and of art, and the trombone was considered a highly religious instrument. The music of angels and also the music of death. And the music... Oh, thank you.
That's my Charlie Brown mom.
Oh, breaking up my serious talk. I love it.
That's what I'm here for.
So I mean, it was the music of chanting choirs, of high religious prowess, and composers like Mendelssohn said that the trombone is far too important of an instrument to write for too often, because he was a deeply spiritual man. So he felt it was only reserved for really religious music. He's such a fantastic composer. I really wish he would have written more for the trombone, but understanding his principle on the instrument itself, I respect that he thought so highly of it. Beethoven, when commissioned by I think it was his grandmother died, and his family asked him to write a piece of music, he wrote a piece for 4 trombones as the funeral music. So, I mean, this is what these composers think of the instrument is. It's very serious. So it's the exact opposite of now. Right. And I don't want to be either. I want to be both. I think that every instrument should have its levity and its seriousness, just like all art should. It shouldn't all be doom and gloom, because that's not life itself. So it's nice. I think it's nice to kind of wear many hats as a musician. And that's one thing that's awesome about the trombone is also it's one of the few instruments that plays in almost every single ensemble you can think of. We play in orchestras. We play in bands. We play jazz music. Some of the most famous jazz musicians are trombonists. The violin, no, they don't do that, even though it's a fantastic instrument. The oboe, no way. Who wants to hear jazz oboe? Not me.
Speak for yourself.
So anyhow, I think that it's one of the interesting things. And it's one of the things I've found through our trombone festival, the trombone retreat. Our students stay with host families here in the area. And most of them have these similar sort of ideas about the trombone, about it being an instrument of silliness and loudness.
Right.
And the coolest thing is when we get a trombone choir of 20 some people and they play a chorale by Bach or Brahms or Beethoven or Bruckner, and it starts very soft. You expect, first of all, even one trombone, you expect it to be so loud if you don't know anything about it. And then you have 20-something trombones. You're expecting it to be like you're going to be shot out of your seat. And then the first chord comes in and it's a gentle piano. And everyone who hears that, there's something, I think, visceral about that people have a reaction to it. Like, whoa, this power in numbers, and then it's gentle and quiet. It's like, whoa, what instrument can do that? I mean, obviously we're biased, but again, in the choir setting, that is what our instrument is meant to do: play in harmony with each other and create sounds together. And we have such a wide expressive range on our instrument.
Man, I'm pumped up now. I want to play choir.
So, like all musicians now, so we're recording this back in good old 2020. What a year. And things are pretty different in the music world during this whole global pandemic. How has that affected you guys?
I think that's a safe yes. Obviously everyone has been affected in some ways. The specific way it's affected our art form, of course, is, when the majority of our art form is predicated on large gatherings and live performances. That's obviously something that's not happening right now. So, we've all experienced a lot of concerts being canceled, seasons being changed, and we've kind of had to adapt. And, some arts organizations are struggling right now trying to figure out what to do next. But, we've adapted, and we've, for example, our retreat this past summer, we did it all online, which you had never done before. We're used to it being this like small thing with just 20 people and a bunch of guest artists. And this year we just why not? Let's open it up to the world for free. We had over 500 people register and watch our online things. And it ended up being a cool experience. And it's kind of forced most musicians to kind of learn technology, learn all these things that we should have learned a while ago, but just kind of get a little more savvy with recording and live streaming and doing all these things. And it's been good for us overall, but we're musicians. We love collaborating. We're meant to play with each other. So that part obviously has been tough at times, and we can't wait to get back. But we're all teaching online and trying to do live music lessons online can be very tricky, I'll say, to put it lightly. But we're all confident we're going to get through it, and if anything, we hope that it makes people appreciate our art form even more and appreciate, what a privilege it is to hear live music and hear people that have been, dedicating their lives to it, and what a special experience that is.
Well, I would say, just to kind of add on to that, you actually took the words out of my mouth a little bit about one thing that was happening or is happening to our world is as the world gets increasingly online, besides Corona, before Corona, everything is available at your fingertips with the internet. Our career and our livelihood and our passion is always under attack a little bit. Why does our city need an orchestra? Why does our city need a jazz club? Why does our city need this, that, and other? Well, I think right now that's one of the silver linings, hopefully, of this is that it has been all online now. There have been no opportunities to go hear live concerts. And what I think we're all collectively hoping for is ask and ye shall receive. You now see what it's like to not have these things in your community and at your fingertips in a different way to go out and see a concert. And hopefully people are running towards the symphony halls and the performing arts spaces and the jazz clubs and all that after this is all said and done and we have a vaccine and all that jazz, pun intended. that people are just so thirsty for live music and have a newfound appreciation for what we do as musicians. And I'm not just saying trombone players, musicians in general, whatever the genre may be.
Right. And I think that musicians in general are a special group of people, as well as, the impact music has on people's lives is, I don't know. I feel like there's nothing else that really compares to it. The other art forms are beautiful and worth really exploring and getting into, but there's something special, especially about live music. What would you say to folks who are listening who might be interested in pursuing music? Like, is it worth it to study music? Maybe address, like, some folks may have aspirations to be professional, but is it worth it to study music at sort of an amateur level? Is it worth it to play music? And, like, what impact does that have on people's lives?
That's a really good question, and it's obviously very complicated now. We teach at the college level, and you have a lot of people starting school that, from varying degrees, like some people that have been studying their whole life, lessons their whole life, been playing in youth orchestras, have a clear vision of what they want to do, and some that just like, I really like playing in band, and I just want to, keep playing. I'm pretty good. And really, it's, what you tell someone like that is you have to be very clear about, if they are interested in pursuing a career, you have to be very clear about the challenges, and you have to be very clear about, you don't do something like this unless you can't imagine doing something else. It's a very difficult profession to pursue. And, you could go into all the statistics of people that are successful and then get even darker and talk about everything going on right now. But at the end of the day, we're just talking about studying music in general. It's one of the greatest things you can do. I mean, it's proven that one of the only things that activates all areas of your brain at once is literally learning a musical instrument. Listening to music is one of the highest things, but you take it a step further and actually practicing a musical instrument highlights all the areas of your brain. So I tell everyone that studies, even if you decide you don't want to do it the rest of your life, it's going to serve you the rest of your life. And especially people that choose to do it on the amateur level. And one of my favorite things to, talk about is a lot of people assume amateur just means you're not good, but, amateur comes from the Latin word amare, which means to love. It's about doing something you love because you love it. And often people that are amateur musicians end up being the happiest musicians I know. And I encourage anyone to, if you have an instrument or you took piano lessons when you're young or anything like that, there's so many resources available. There's people in your town that will teach you. It's just so good for you to do it. It's good for your soul. So I think, we're lucky we get to do this like every day. But you don't have to be a professional playing at the highest level to really enjoy it.
Yeah. I would say that I'll address the amateur part of things with a story. I had someone approach me. This is probably about 5 years ago in New York. A colleague of mine approached me and said, "Hey, this guy reached out to me and wants to study the trombone. I don't have time. Can you teach him?" And I said, "Sure." And so this guy gets in touch with me, and I ask him where he's at with trombone, where he's at, and he goes, "I've never played trombone. I can't read music. I've never played music, but I want to try it." And I was like, "Okay, well, all right, let's try this out. Why the trombone?" And he said, "Well, I'm an avid music fan. I listen to a lot of classical and jazz, and I've always liked the trombone, but I never really thought about it. But then a couple months ago, I had this really vivid dream where I could fluently play the trombone in like a jazz setting. And I woke up and I called Sam Ash, which is a music store, and went and bought a trombone. And he just wanted to learn it. And so he had in his mind, he was like playing jazz, like really. And then he tries the trombone and he was like, "Oh my God, this is so hard." And, he ended up having to put it on the back burner just because of his career. But I've had a couple of amateur students that they've come to me and just said, "I played trombone in high school. My job is stressing me out. My doctor says I need a stress relief, and I'll play the trombone." I've had a couple like that it's for them. It's something that is focused, but they're putting no pressure on themselves. They just want something to kind of bury their energy into in a positive way. And they have so much fun. Each lesson, they're just like super excited to be there, having such a good time. And giving themselves good mental stimulation, like Sebastian was talking about. And I think that you can't. I mean, there are other things you could do, but like, there's very few that are, I think, as satisfying / frustrating as playing a musical instrument.
Yeah, it definitely can be a little frustrating, especially when you're just learning. But I think I agree, it's totally worth it to do. It's something that is very enriching and will serve you even if you're not doing it full time. Now, before we run out of time, I wanted to play a little bit of actual trombone music. Sebastian, before we started recording, you mentioned that you have a clip that we can listen to. You want to set that up for us?
Yeah, this is a recording of a live performance from a couple of summers ago of Steven Verhelst's trio for trombones with it's Nick and I and our friend Brian Santero, who's the principal trombonist in the New York City Ballet. And it's we're just going to play a selection from this piece called Fire Horse. And the theme is in general about a horse. I think, aren't the movements titled like trot and like gallop and whatever, but it's actually very cool music. It's a Dutch composer, I believe, and he's written a lot of really cool sounding things, and it just gives you a nice idea of the sonority possibilities with the trombone.
Well, that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Sebastian and Nick.
Hey, thank you.
So if people want to learn more about the retreat, about the podcast, again, where can they go? How can they dig deeper into the trombone universe?
Well, we try to keep it pretty simple. So basically, if you Google Trombone Retreat, so we're at Trombone Retreat on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Our website is tromboneretreat.com. The podcast is The Trombone Retreat. Anywhere you find your podcast, also a link on our website to get to it. What am I forgetting, Nick?
You're at JS Vera.
Oh, yeah. On Instagram, I'm at js.vera. On Twitter, I'm at Sebastian Vera. Nick is at bass trombone 444 on Instagram.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking time to come and talk to me today. I love the stuff you make. I love the stuff you play. I love the instrument, and I love talking to both of you.
Thanks for having us on, Ralph.
Yeah, it was fun. We love the stuff you make too.
Oh, shucks.
Yes. Oh, shucks.
Isn't that something?